Give up the relationship with yourself. When one is fully conscious, would one still have a need for a relationship? Would a man still feel drawn to a woman? Would a woman still feel incomplete without a man? Enlightened or not, you are either a man or a woman. So, on the level of your form identity, you are not complete. You are one half of the whole. This incompleteness is felt as male-female attraction, the pull toward the opposite energy polarity, no matter how conscious you are. But in that state of interconnectedness, you feel this pull somewhere on the surface or periphery of your life. Anything that happens to you in that state feels somewhat like that. The whole world seems like waves or ripples on the surface of a vast and deep ocean. You are that ocean. And of course, you are also a ripple, but a ripple that has realized its true identity as the ocean. And compared to that vastness and depth, the world of waves and ripples is not all that important. This does not mean that you don't relate deeply to other people or to your partner. In fact, you can relate deeply only if you are conscious of being. Coming from being, you are able to focus beyond the veil of form. In being, male and female are one. Your form may continue to have certain needs, but being has none. It is already complete and whole. If those needs are met, that is beautiful, but whether or not they are met makes no difference to your deep inner state. So it is perfectly possible for an enlightened person, if the need for the male or female polarity is not met, to feel a sense of lack or incompleteness on the outer level of his or her being, yet at the same time be totally complete, fulfilled, and at peace within. In the quest for enlightenment, is being gay a help or hindrance? Does being gay make any difference as you approach enlightenment? Uncertainty about your sexuality, followed by the realization that you are different from others, may force you to disidentify from socially conditioned patterns of thought and behavior. This will automatically raise your level of consciousness above that of the unconscious majority, whose members unquestioningly take on board all inherited patterns. In that respect, being gay can be a help. Being an outsider to some extent, someone who does not fit in with others or is rejected by them for whatever reason, makes life difficult. But it also places you at an advantage as far as enlightenment is concerned. It takes you out of unconsciousness, almost by force. On the other hand, if you then develop a sense of identity based on your gayness, you have escaped one trap only to fall into another. You will play roles and games dictated by a mental image you have of yourself as gay. You will become unconscious. You will become unreal. Underneath your ego mask, you will become very unhappy. If this happens to you, being gay will have become a hindrance. But you always get another chance, of course. Acute unhappiness can be a great awakener. The relationship with yourself. Is it not true that you need to have a good relationship with yourself and love yourself before you can have a fulfilling relationship with another person? If you cannot be at ease with yourself when you are alone, you will seek a relationship to cover up your unease. You can be sure that the unease will then reappear in some other form within the relationship, and you will probably hold your partner responsible for it. All you really need to do is accept this moment fully. You are then at ease in the here and now, at ease with yourself. But do you need to have a relationship with yourself at all? Why can't you just be yourself? When you have a relationship with yourself, you have split yourself into two, I and myself, subject and object. That mind-created duality is the root cause of all unnecessary complexity, of all problems and conflict in your life. In the state of enlightenment, you are yourself. You and yourself merge into one. You do not judge yourself. You do not feel sorry for yourself. You are not proud of yourself. You do not love yourself. You do not hate yourself, and so on. The split caused by self-reflective consciousness is healed. Its curse is removed. There is no self that you need to protect, defend, or feed anymore. When you are enlightened, there is one relationship that you no longer have: the relationship with yourself. Once you have given that up, all your other relationships will be love relationships. Beyond happiness and unhappiness, there is peace. Is there a difference between happiness and inner peace? Yes. Happiness depends on conditions being perceived as positive. Inner peace does not. Is it not possible to attract only positive conditions into our life if our attitude and our thinking are always positive? Wouldn't we then manifest only positive events and situations? But do you truly know what is positive and what is negative? Do you have the total picture? There have been many people for whom limitation, failure, loss, illness, or pain, in whatever form, turned out to be their greatest teacher. It taught them to let go of false self-images and superficial ego-dictated goals and desires. It gave them depth, humility, and compassion. It made them more real. Whenever anything negative happens to you, there is a deep lesson concealed within it, although you may not see it at the time. Even a brief illness or an accident can show you what is real and unreal in your life, what ultimately matters and what doesn't. Seen from a higher perspective, conditions are always positive. To be more precise, they are neither positive nor negative. They are as they are. And when you live in complete acceptance of what is, which is the only sane way to live, there is no good or bad in your life anymore. There is only a higher good, which includes the bad. Seen from the perspective of the mind, however, there is good and bad, like and dislike, love and hate. Hence, in the book of Genesis, it is said that Adam and Eve were no longer allowed to dwell in paradise when they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The end of your life drama. When you live in complete acceptance of what is, that is the end of all drama in your life. Nobody can even have an argument with you, no matter how hard he or she tries. You cannot have an argument with a fully conscious person. An argument implies identification with your mind, a mental position, as well as resistance and reaction to the other person's position. The result is that the polar opposites become mutually energized. These are the mechanics of unconsciousness. You can still make your point clearly and firmly, but there will be no reactive force behind it, no defense or attack, so it won't turn into drama. When you are fully conscious, you cease to be in conflict. No one who is at one with himself can even conceive of conflict. A Course in Miracles. This refers not only to conflict with other people, but, more fundamentally, to conflict within you, which ceases when there is no longer any clash between the demands and expectations of your mind and what is. However, as long as you are in the physical dimension and linked to the collective human psyche, physical pain, although rare, is still possible. This is not to be confused with suffering, with mental emotional pain. All suffering is ego-created and is due to resistance. Also, as long as you are in this dimension, you are still subject to its cyclical nature and to the law of impermanence of all things. But you no longer perceive this as bad. It just is. Through allowing the isness of all things, a deeper dimension underneath the play of opposites reveals itself to you as an abiding presence, an unchanging deep stillness, an uncaused joy beyond good and bad. This is the joy of being, the peace of God. On the level of form, there is birth and death, creation and destruction, growth and dissolution of seemingly separate forms. This is reflected everywhere. In the life cycle of a star or a planet, a physical body, a tree, a flower, and in the rise and fall of nations, political systems, civilizations, and in the inevitable cycles of gain and loss in the life of an individual. There are cycles of success, when things come to you and thrive, and cycles of failure, when they wither or disintegrate, and you have to let them go in order to make room for new things to arise, or for transformation to happen. If you cling and resist at that point, it means you are refusing to go with the flow of life, and you will suffer. It is not true that the up cycle is good and the down cycle bad, except in the mind's judgment. Growth is usually considered positive, but nothing can grow forever. If growth of whatever kind were to go on, it would eventually become monstrous and destructive. Dissolution is needed for new growth to happen. One cannot exist without the other. The down cycle is absolutely essential for spiritual realization. You must have failed deeply on some level or experienced some deep loss or pain to be drawn to the spiritual dimension. Or perhaps your very success became empty and meaningless, and so turned out to be failure. Failure lies concealed in every success, and success in every failure. In this world, which is to say on the level of form, everybody fails sooner or later, of course, and every achievement eventually comes to nothing. All forms are impermanent. You can still be active and enjoy manifesting and creating new forms and circumstances, but you won't be identified with them. You do not need them to give you a sense of self. They are not your life, only your life situation. Your physical energy is also subject to cycles. It cannot always be at a peak. There will be times of low energy as well as high energy. There will be periods when you are highly active and creative, and there may also be times when everything seems stagnant, when it seems that you are not getting anywhere, not achieving anything. A cycle can last for anything from a few hours to a few years. There are large cycles and small cycles within these large ones. Many illnesses are created through fighting against the cycles of low energy, which are vital for regeneration. The compulsion to do and the tendency to derive your sense of self-worth and identity from external factors, such as achievement, is an inevitable illusion as long as you are identified with the mind. This makes it hard or impossible for you to accept the low cycles and allow them to be. Thus, the intelligence of the organism may take over as a self-protective measure and create an illness in order to force you to stop so that the necessary regeneration can take place. The cyclical nature of the universe is closely linked with the impermanence of all things and situations. The Buddha made this a central part of his teaching. All conditions are highly unstable and in constant flux. Or, as he put it, impermanence is a characteristic of every condition, every situation you will ever encounter in your life. It will change, disappear, or no longer satisfy you. Impermanence is also central to Jesus' teaching. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. As long as a condition is judged as good by your mind, whether it be a relationship, a possession, a social role, a place, or your physical body, the mind attaches itself to it and identifies with it. It makes you happy, makes you feel good about yourself, and it may become part of who you are or think you are. But nothing lasts in this dimension, where moth and rust consume. Either it ends, or it changes, or it may undergo a polarity shift. The same condition that was good yesterday suddenly becomes bad. Yesterday, or last year, has suddenly or gradually turned into bad. The same condition that made you happy then makes you unhappy. The prosperity of today becomes the empty consumerism of tomorrow. The happy wedding and honeymoon become the unhappy divorce or the unhappy coexistence. Or a condition disappears, so its absence makes you unhappy. When a condition or situation that the mind has attached itself to and identified with changes or disappears, the mind cannot accept it. It will cling to the disappearing condition and resist the change. It is almost as if a limb were being torn off your body. We sometimes hear of people who have lost all their money or whose reputation has been ruined committing suicide. Those are the extreme cases. Others, whenever a major loss of one kind or another occurs, just become deeply unhappy or make themselves ill. They cannot distinguish between their life and their life situation. I recently read about a famous actress who died in her 80s. As her beauty started to fade and became ravaged by old age, she grew desperately unhappy and became a recluse. She too had identified with a condition, her external appearance. First, the condition gave her a happy sense of self, then an unhappy one. If she had been able to connect with the formless and timeless life within, she could have watched and allowed the fading of her external form from a place of serenity and peace. Moreover, her external form would have become increasingly transparent to the light shining through from her ageless true nature. So her beauty would not really have faded, but simply become transformed into spiritual beauty. However, nobody told her that this is possible. The most essential kind of knowledge is not yet widely accessible. The Buddha taught that even your happiness is dukkha, a Pali word meaning suffering or unsatisfactoriness. It is inseparable from its opposite. This means that your happiness and unhappiness are, in fact, one. Only the illusion of time separates them. This is not being negative. It is simply recognizing the nature of things so that you don't pursue an illusion for the rest of your life. Nor is it saying that you should no longer appreciate pleasant or beautiful things or conditions, but to seek something through them that they cannot give. An identity, a sense of permanency and fulfillment, is a recipe for frustration and suffering. The whole advertising industry and consumer society would collapse if people became enlightened and no longer sought to find their identity through things. The more you seek happiness in this way, the more it will elude you. Nothing out there will ever satisfy you, except temporarily and superficially. But you may need to experience many disillusions before you realize that truth. Things and conditions can give you pleasure, but they will also give you pain. Things and conditions can give you pleasure, but they cannot give you joy. Nothing can give you joy. Joy is uncaused and arises from within as the joy of being. It is an essential part of the inner state of peace, the state that has been called the peace of God. This is your natural state, not something that you need to work hard for or struggle to attain. Many people never realize that there can be no salvation in anything they do, possess, or attain. Those who do realize it often become world-weary and depressed. If nothing can give you true fulfillment, what is there left to strive for? What is the point in anything? The Old Testament prophet must have arrived at such a realization when he wrote, "I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind." When you reach this point, you are one step away from despair and one step away from enlightenment. A Buddhist monk once told me, "All I have learned in the 20 years that I have been a monk, I can sum up in one sentence. All that arises passes away. This I know." What he meant, of course, was, "This I have learned, to offer no resistance to what is. I have learned to allow the present moment to be and to accept the impermanent nature of all things and conditions. Thus have I found peace." To offer no resistance to life is to be in a state of grace, ease, and lightness. This state is then no longer dependent upon things being in a certain way, good or bad. It seems almost paradoxical. Yet when your inner dependency on form is gone, the general conditions of your life, the outer forms, tend to improve greatly. Things, people, or conditions that you thought you needed for your happiness now come to you with no struggle or effort on your part, and you are free to enjoy and appreciate them while they last. All those things, of course, will still pass away. Cycles will come and go, but with dependency gone, there is no fear of loss anymore. Life flows with ease. The happiness that is derived from some secondary source is never very deep. It is only a pale reflection of the joy of being, the vibrant peace that you find within as you enter the state of non-resistance. Being takes you beyond the polar opposites of the mind and frees you from dependency on form. Even if everything were to collapse and crumble all around you, you would still feel a deep inner core of peace. You may not be happy, but you will be at peace. Using and relinquishing negativity. All inner resistance is experienced as negativity in one form or another. All negativity is resistance. In this context, the two words are almost synonymous. Negativity ranges from irritation or impatience to fierce anger, from a depressed mood or sullen resentment to suicidal despair. Sometimes the resistance triggers the emotional pain body, in which case even a minor situation may produce intense negativity, such as anger, depression, or deep grief. The ego believes that through negativity, it can manipulate reality and get what it wants. It believes that through it can attract a desirable condition or dissolve an undesirable one. A Course in Miracles rightly points out that whenever you are unhappy, there is the unconscious belief that the unhappiness buys you what you want. If you, the mind, did not believe that unhappiness works, why would you create it? The fact is, of course, that negativity does not work. Instead of attracting a desirable condition, it stops it from arising. Instead of dissolving an undesirable one, it keeps it in place. Its only useful function is that it strengthens the ego, and that is why the ego loves it. Once you have identified with some form of negativity, you do not want to let go, and on a deeply unconscious level, you do not want positive change. It would threaten your identity as a depressed, angry, or hard-done-by person. You will then ignore, deny, or sabotage the positive in your life. This is a common phenomenon. It is also insane. Negativity is totally unnatural. It is a psychic pollutant, and there is a deep link between the poisoning and destruction of nature and the vast negativity that has accumulated in the collective human psyche. No other life form on the planet knows negativity. Only humans, just as no other life form violates and poisons the earth that sustains it. Have you ever seen an unhappy flower or a stressed oak tree? Have you come across a depressed dolphin, a frog that has a problem with self-esteem, a cat that cannot relax, or a bird that carries hatred and resentment? The only animals that may occasionally experience something akin to negativity or show signs of neurotic behavior are those that live in close contact with humans and so link into the human mind and its insanity. Watch any plant or animal and let it teach you acceptance of what is. Surrender to the now. Let it teach you being. Let it teach you integrity, which means to be one, to be yourself, to be real. Let it teach you how to live and how to die, and how not to make living and dying into a problem. I have lived with several Zen masters, all of them cats. Even ducks have taught me important spiritual lessons. Just watching them as a meditation, how peacefully they float along, at ease with themselves, totally present in the now, dignified and perfect as only a mindless creature can be. Occasionally, however, two ducks will get into a fight, sometimes for no apparent reason, or because one duck has strayed into another's private space. The fight usually lasts only for a few seconds, and then the ducks separate, swim off in opposite directions, and vigorously flap their wings a few times. They then continue to swim on peacefully, as if the fight had never happened. When I observed that for the first time, I suddenly realized that by flapping their wings, they were releasing surplus energy, thus preventing it from becoming trapped in their body and turning into negativity. This is natural wisdom, and it is easy for them because they do not have a mind that keeps the past alive unnecessarily and then builds identity around it. Couldn't a negative emotion also contain an important message? For example, if I often feel depressed, it may be a signal that there is something wrong with my life, and it may force me to look at my life situation and make some changes. So I need to listen to what the emotion is telling me and not just dismiss it as negative. Yes, recurring negative emotions do sometimes contain a message, as do illnesses. But any changes that you make, whether they have to do with your work, your relationships, or your surroundings, are ultimately only cosmetic unless they arise out of a change in your level of consciousness. And as far as that is concerned, it can only mean one thing: becoming more present. When you have reached a certain degree of presence, you don't need negativity anymore to tell you what is needed in your life situation. But as long as negativity is there, use it. Use it as a kind of signal that reminds you to be more present. How do we stop negativity from arising? And how do we get rid of it once it is there? As I said, you stop it from arising by being fully present. But don't become discouraged. There are as yet few people on the planet who can sustain a state of continuous presence, although some are getting close to it. Soon, I believe there will be many more. Whenever you notice that some form of negativity has arisen within you, look on it not as a failure, but as a helpful signal that is telling you, wake up. Get out of your mind. Be present. There is a novel by Aldous Huxley called Island, written in his later years when he became very interested in spiritual teachings. It tells the story of a man shipwrecked on a remote island, cut off from the rest of the world. This island contains a unique civilization. The unusual thing about it is that its inhabitants, unlike those of the rest of the world, are actually sane. The first thing that the man notices are the colorful parrots perched in the trees, and they seem to be constantly croaking the words, "Attention, here and now. Attention, here and now." We later learn that the islanders taught them these words in order to be reminded continuously to stay present. So whenever you feel negativity arising within you, whether caused by an external factor, a thought, or even nothing in particular that you are aware of, look on it as a voice saying, "Attention, here and now. Wake up." Even the slightest irritation is significant and needs to be acknowledged and looked at. Otherwise, there will be a cumulative buildup of unobserved reactions. As I said before, you may be able to just drop it once you realize that you don't want to have this energy field inside you and that it serves no purpose. But then make sure that you drop it completely. If you cannot drop it, just accept that it is there and take your attention into the feeling. As I pointed out earlier, as an alternative to dropping a negative reaction, you can make it disappear by imagining yourself becoming transparent to the external cause of the reaction. I recommend that you practice it with little, even trivial, things first. Let's say that you are sitting quietly at home. Suddenly, there is the penetrating sound of a car alarm from across the street. Irritation arises. What is the purpose of the irritation? None whatsoever. Why did you create it? You didn't. The mind did. It was totally automatic, totally unconscious. Why did the mind create it? Because it holds the unconscious belief that its resistance, which you experience as negativity or unhappiness in some form, will somehow dissolve the undesirable condition. This, of course, is a delusion. The resistance that it creates, the irritation or anger in this case, is far more disturbing than the original cause that it is attempting to dissolve. All this can be transformed into spiritual practice. Feel yourself becoming transparent, as it were, without the solidity of a material body. Now allow the noise, or whatever causes a negative reaction, to pass right through you. It is no longer hitting a solid wall inside you. As I said, practice with little things first. The car alarm, the dog barking, the children screaming, the traffic jam. Instead of having a wall of resistance inside you that gets constantly and painfully hit by things that should not be happening, let everything pass through you. Somebody says something to you that is rude or designed to hurt. Instead of going into unconscious reaction and negativity, such as attack, defense, or withdrawal, you let it pass right through you. Offer no resistance. It is as if there is nobody there to get hurt anymore. That is forgiveness. In this way, you become invulnerable. You can still tell that person that his or her behavior is unacceptable if that is what you choose to do, but that person no longer has the power to control your inner state. You are then in your power, not in someone else's, nor are you run by your mind. Whether it is a car alarm, a rude person, a flood, an earthquake, or the loss of all your possessions, the resistance mechanism is the same. Asterisk. I have been practicing meditation. I have been to workshops. I have read many books on spirituality. I try to be in a state of non-resistance. But if you ask me whether I have found true and lasting inner peace, my honest answer would have to be no. Why haven't I found it? What else can I do? Asterisk. You are still seeking outside, and you cannot get out of the seeking mode. Maybe the next workshop will have the answer. Maybe that new technique. I would say, don't look for peace. Don't look for any other state than the one you are in now. Otherwise, you will set up inner conflict and unconscious resistance. Forgive yourself for not being at peace. The moment you completely accept your non-peace becomes transmuted into peace. Anything you accept fully will get you there, will take you into peace. This is the miracle of surrender. You may have heard the phrase, turn the other cheek, which a great teacher of enlightenment used 2,000 years ago. He was attempting to convey, symbolically, the secret of non-resistance and non-reaction. In this statement, as in all his others, he was concerned only with your inner reality, not with the outer conduct of your life. Do you know the story of Banzan? Before he became a great Zen master, he spent many years in the pursuit of enlightenment, but it eluded him. Then one day, as he was walking in the marketplace, he overheard a conversation between a butcher and his customer. "Give me the best piece of meat you have," said the customer. And the butcher replied, "Every piece of meat I have is the best. There is no piece of meat here that is not the best." Upon hearing this, Banzan became enlightened. I can see you're waiting for some explanation. When you accept what is, every piece of meat, every moment, is the best. That is enlightenment, the nature of compassion. Having gone beyond the mind-made opposites, you become like a deep lake, the outer situation of your life, and whatever happens there is the surface of the lake, sometimes calm, sometimes windy and rough, according to the cycles and seasons. Deep down, however, the lake is always undisturbed. You are the whole lake, not just the surface, and you are in touch with your own depth, which remains absolutely still. You don't resist change by mentally clinging to any situation. Your inner peace does not depend on it. You abide in being, unchanging, timeless, deathless, and you are no longer dependent for fulfillment or happiness on the outer world of constantly fluctuating forms. You can enjoy them, play with them, create new forms, appreciate the beauty of it all, but there will be no need to attach yourself to any of it. When you become this detached, does it not mean that you also become remote from other human beings? On the contrary, as long as you are unaware of being, the reality of other humans will elude you because you have not found your own. Your mind will like or dislike their form, which is not just their body, but includes their mind as well. True relationship becomes possible only when there is an awareness of being coming from being. You will perceive another person's body and mind as just a screen, as it were, behind which you can feel the true reality, as you feel yours. When confronted with someone else's suffering or unconscious behavior, you can stay present and in touch with your own being. This awareness allows you to look beyond the surface and feel the other person's radiant and pure essence. At the level of being, all suffering is recognized as an illusion, stemming from identification with form. Miracles of healing can occur through this realization, awakening consciousness in others when they are ready. Is this what compassion is? Yes, compassion is the awareness of a deep bond between yourself and all creatures. However, there are two sides to this bond. On one hand, since you are still here as a physical body, you share the vulnerability and mortality of your physical form with every other human and living being. The next time you think, "I have nothing in common with this person," remember that you have a great deal in common. In a few years, whether 2 years or 70, both of you will become rotting corpses, then piles of dust, then nothing at all. This sobering realization leaves little room for pride. Is this a negative thought? No, it is a fact. Why close your eyes to it? In that sense, there is total equality between you and every other creature. One of the most powerful spiritual practices is to meditate deeply on the mortality of physical forms, including your own. This practice is often referred to as die before you die. Go into it deeply. Your physical form is dissolving. Then a moment comes when all mind forms or thoughts also die, yet you are still there. The divine presence that you are, radiant and fully awake. Nothing that was real ever died. Only names, forms, and illusions. The realization of this deathless dimension, your true nature, is the other side of compassion. On a deep feeling level, you recognize not only your own immortality, but also the immortality of every other creature. On the level of form, you share mortality and the precariousness of existence. On the level of being, you share eternal, radiant life. These are the two aspects of compassion. In compassion, the seemingly opposite feelings of sadness and joy merge into one, becoming transmuted into a deep inner peace. This is the peace of God, one of the most noble feelings humans are capable of, with great healing and transformative power. However, true compassion, as I have described, is rare. To have deep empathy for the suffering of another being requires a high degree of consciousness, but that alone is not complete. True compassion goes beyond empathy or sympathy. It does not happen until sadness merges with joy, the joy of being beyond form, the joy of eternal life toward a different order of reality. Some may argue that the body needs to die, but I believe we can achieve physical immortality. We believe in death, and that's why the body dies. The body does not die because you believe in death. It exists, or seems to, because of this belief. Body and death are part of the same illusion created by the egoic moment of consciousness, which has no awareness of the source of life, and perceives itself as separate and constantly under threat. You may perceive yourself as a vulnerable body that was born and will later die. This is the illusion. Body and death, one illusion. You cannot have one without the other. If you want to keep one side of the illusion, you cannot rid yourself of the other. You want to keep the body and eliminate death, but that is impossible. You must relinquish all of it. However, you cannot escape from the body, nor do you have to. The body is a misperception of your true nature, yet your true nature is concealed within that illusion, not outside it. The body is still the only access point to it. If you mistook an angel for a stone statue, all you would need to do is adjust your vision and look more closely at the statue, not start looking somewhere else. You would then find that there never was a stone statue. If belief in death creates the body, why does an animal have a body? An animal doesn't have an ego and doesn't believe in death, yet it still dies or seems to. Remember that your perception of the world is a reflection of your state of consciousness. You are not separate from it, and there is no objective world out there. Every moment, your consciousness creates the world you inhabit. One of the greatest insights from modern physics is the unity between the observer and the observed. The person conducting the experiment cannot be separated from the observed phenomena, and a different way of looking can cause the observed phenomenon to behave differently. If you believe deeply in separation and the struggle for survival, you will see that belief reflected all around you, and your perceptions will be governed by fear. You inhabit a world of death, with bodies fighting, killing, and devouring each other. Nothing is what it seems. The world you see through the egoic mind may appear imperfect, even a veil of tears, but whatever you perceive is only a symbol, like an image in a dream. It is how your consciousness interprets and interacts with the molecular energy dance of the universe. This energy is the raw material of so-called physical reality. You see it in terms of bodies, birth, and death, or as a struggle for survival. An infinite number of completely different interpretations exist, depending on the perceiving consciousness. Every being is a focal point of consciousness, creating its own world. Though all those worlds are interconnected, there is a human world, an ant world, a dolphin world, and so on. Countless beings exist whose consciousness frequency is so different from yours that you are probably unaware of their existence, just as they are of yours. Highly conscious beings, aware of their connectedness with the source and with each other, inhabit a world that would appear to you as a heavenly realm. Yet all worlds are ultimately one. Our collective human world is largely created through the level of consciousness we call mind. Even within the collective human world, vast differences exist. Many different subworlds, depending on the perceivers or creators of their respective worlds. Since all worlds are interconnected, when collective human consciousness transforms, nature and the animal kingdom will reflect that transformation. Hence the biblical statement that, in the coming age, the lion shall lie down with the lamb. This points to the possibility of a completely different order of reality. The world as it appears to us now is largely a reflection of the egoic mind, fear being an unavoidable consequence of egoic delusion. It is a world dominated by fear, just as images in a dream symbolize inner states and feelings. Our collective reality is a symbolic expression of fear and the layers of negativity accumulated in the human psyche. We are not separate from our world. When the majority of humans become free of egoic delusion, this interchange will affect all of creation. You will literally inhabit a new world. This shift in planetary consciousness aligns with the Buddhist saying that every tree and blade of grass will eventually become enlightened. According to St. Paul, the whole of creation is waiting for humans to become enlightened. He states that all of creation will become redeemed through this awakening. Up to now, the entire created universe has groaned as if in the pains of childbirth. What is being born is a new consciousness, with its inevitable reflection, a new world. This is also foretold in the New Testament book of Revelation. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. But do not confuse cause and effect. Your primary task is not to seek salvation by creating a better world, but to awaken out of identification with form. You are then no longer bound to this world, this level of reality. You can feel your roots in the unmanifested, and thus be free of attachment to the manifest world. You can still enjoy the passing pleasures of this world, but there is no fear of loss anymore, so you don't need to cling to them. Although you can enjoy sensory pleasures, the craving for sensory experience is gone, as is the constant search for fulfillment through psychological gratification or feeding the ego. You are in touch with something infinitely greater than any pleasure, greater than any manifested thing. At this point, you don't need the world to be different from how it is. Only when you reach this point can you begin to make a real contribution toward creating a better world. You will be able to feel true compassion and help others at the level of cause. Only those who have transcended the world can bring about a better world. Remember the dual nature of true compassion, which is awareness of a common bond of shared mortality and immortality. At this deep level, compassion becomes healing in the broadest sense. Your healing influence is based not on doing, but on being. Everyone you come into contact with will be touched by your presence and affected by the peace you emanate, whether they are conscious of it or not. When you are fully present, and those around you manifest unconscious behavior, you won't feel the need to react. You don't give that behavior any reality. Your peace is so vast and deep that anything not in harmony with it disappears as if it had never existed. This breaks the karmic cycle of action and reaction. Animals, trees, and flowers will feel your peace and respond to it. You teach through being, demonstrating the peace of God. You become the light of the world, an emanation of pure consciousness, eliminating suffering at the level of cause. This doesn't mean you can't also teach through doing, like pointing out how to disidentify from the mind or recognize unconscious patterns within oneself. However, who you are is a more vital teaching and a more powerful transformer of the world than what you say or even what you do. Furthermore, to recognize the primacy of being and thus work at the level of cause does not exclude the possibility of your compassion manifesting at the level of doing and effect. When a hungry person asks you for bread and you have some, you will give it. But in that moment, what truly matters is the shared being of which the bread is only a symbol. A deep healing takes place within that moment. There is no giver, no receiver, yet there shouldn't be hunger and starvation in the first place. How can we create a better world without addressing evils like hunger and violence? All evils are effects of unconsciousness. You can alleviate the effects, but cannot eliminate them unless you address their cause. True change happens within, not without. If you feel called to alleviate suffering in the world, it is a noble endeavor. But remember not to focus exclusively on the outer. Otherwise, you may encounter frustration and despair. Without a profound change in human consciousness, the world's suffering is a bottomless pit. So, don't let your compassion become one-sided. Empathy with someone else's pain or lack, coupled with a desire to help, must be balanced with a deeper realization of the eternal nature of all life and the ultimate illusion of pain. Let your peace flow into whatever you do, and you will be working on both the levels of effect and cause simultaneously. This applies if you support a movement aimed at stopping deeply unconscious humans from destroying themselves, each other, or the planet, or from inflicting dreadful suffering on other sentient beings. Remember, just as you cannot fight darkness, you cannot fight unconsciousness. Trying to do so will strengthen the polar opposites and entrench them more deeply. You will become identified with one of the polarities and create an enemy, drawing yourself into unconsciousness. Raise awareness by disseminating information or practice passive resistance, but ensure you carry no resistance within, no hatred, no negativity. Love your enemies, said Jesus, which ultimately means have no enemies. Once you engage on the level of effect, it is all too easy to lose yourself in it. Stay alert and very present. The causal level must remain your primary focus. The teaching of enlightenment is your main purpose, and peace is your most precious gift to the world. The meaning of surrender, acceptance of the now. You mentioned surrender a few times. Some people dislike that idea, perceiving it as somewhat fatalistic. They argue that if we always accept the way things are, we may not strive to improve them. Progress, both personally and collectively, seems to be about transcending limitations and creating something better. If we hadn't done this, we would still be living in caves. How do you reconcile surrender with the need to change things and get things done? For many, surrender may carry negative connotations, implying defeat, giving up, or failing to rise to life's challenges. However, true surrender is something entirely different. It does not mean passively accepting whatever situation you find yourself in, or doing nothing about it, nor does it mean ceasing to make plans or take positive action. Surrender is the profound wisdom of yielding to rather than opposing the flow of life. The only place to experience this flow is in the now. Thus, to surrender is to accept the present moment unconditionally and without reservation. It is to relinquish resistance to what is. Inner resistance says no to reality through mental judgment and emotional negativity, particularly pronounced when things go wrong. This resistance creates a gap between the rigid expectations of your mind and what is. This gap is the source of pain. If you have lived long enough, you know that things often go wrong. It is precisely at those times that surrender should be practiced to eliminate pain and sorrow from your life. Acceptance of what is frees you from mind identification and reconnects you with being. Resistance is the mind. Surrender is an inner phenomenon. It does not mean you cannot take action and change your situation on the outer level. In fact, you do not need to accept the overall situation when you surrender. You only need to accept the tiny segment called the now. For example, if you find yourself stuck in the mud, you wouldn't simply resign yourself to being there. Resignation is not surrender. You don't have to accept an undesirable or unpleasant life situation, nor should you deceive yourself into thinking there is nothing wrong with it. Instead, recognize fully that you want to get out of the mud. Narrow your attention to the present moment without labeling it. This means there is no judgment of the now. Therefore, there is no resistance or emotional negativity. You accept the present moment as it is, then take action to get out of the mud. Such action is what I call positive action, far more effective than negative action, which arises from anger, despair, or frustration. Until you achieve your desired result, continue to practice surrender by refraining from labeling the now. Let me give you a visual analogy. Imagine you are walking along a path at night, surrounded by thick fog, but you have a powerful flashlight that cuts through the fog and creates a clear space in front of you. The fog represents your life situation, encompassing both the past and the future. The flashlight symbolizes your conscious presence, while the clear space signifies the now. Non-surrender hardens your psychological form, creating a shell of the ego and fostering a strong sense of separateness. As a result, the world around you, especially people, can seem threatening. An unconscious compulsion to judge and destroy arises, leading to competition and domination. Even nature becomes your enemy, as fear governs your perceptions and interpretations. The mental disease we label as paranoia is merely a more acute form of this normal yet dysfunctional state of consciousness. Your psychological form hardens, and so does your physical form. Your body becomes rigid through resistance, causing tension to arise in various areas. This tension restricts the free flow of life energy, essential for healthy functioning. While bodywork and physical therapy can temporarily restore this flow, true relief comes only through practicing surrender in your everyday life. Without addressing the underlying resistance pattern, temporary relief is all you will achieve. Within you lies something that remains unaffected by the transient circumstances of your life. Only through surrender can you access this essence, your very being, which exists eternally in the timeless realm of the present. Finding this life is the one thing that Jesus spoke about. If you find your life situation unsatisfactory or intolerable, it is only by surrendering that you can break the unconscious resistance pattern keeping you trapped in that situation. Surrendering is fully compatible with taking action, initiating change, or achieving goals. In a surrendered state, a different energy flows into your actions. Surrender reconnects you with the source energy of being, infusing your actions with a joyful celebration of life energy that draws you deeper into the now. Through non-resistance, the quality of your consciousness, and thus the quality of whatever you are doing or creating, is immeasurably enhanced. The results will take care of themselves, reflecting this higher quality. This concept of surrendered action differs from the traditional notion of work. As more people awaken, the word work may fade from our vocabulary, perhaps replaced by a new term. The quality of your consciousness in this moment is the main determinant of the future you will experience. Thus, surrender is the most important step you can take to bring about positive change. Any action you take is secondary. No truly positive action can arise from an unsurrendered state of consciousness. Thank you so much for listening to this audiobook. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more amazing stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Your support means everything. Please like, share, and leave a comment below.